Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown. And this time I'm going to be covering Enclave, which came out from Robby Howell in 2023. Now this is a diceless game, so no dice roller beneath me, because it's not going to be needed. Now when I first looked at this system, I was concerned it was going to be overly complex to replace just simply rolling dice. But it's actually just taking that stage out. It plays very, very much like any other role-playing game. It just formalizes the system that I can accept it anyway. So I found this a very easy system to get into, coming up with ideas, playing, because Robby was nice enough to reach out to me and set up a game session with one of his players, Thomas, and I would like to thank both of them, first of all, but we had a game and it was very, very interesting and very, very fun. And as I said, I found it amazingly easy to slip into this because it's just like any other role-playing game. It's just taking the dice out of that, as we will see as we go along. Now obviously this isn't going to fit into a standard rules breakdown video format, as a number of the sections just won't exist. So I'll try and cover a lot of ground, and I'll talk over the adventure that Robby ran for me and why I think it was so fun, what making it different, and why I just found it so easy to get into it. Now, as usual, we'll need a sample character, and in this case, it's my character that I played. I created this up. I pardon for the mess on the page, because we were creating it at the start of the game session. I wanted to get things going, so I was just typing. I loaded up the JPEG of the character sheet and just typed it out in Microsoft Paint on Windows. So, I've got John Ford, who is a Wanderer. We've got his stats. He has 1+ in Vitality, 2 in Sensory, 1 in Reflex, and 2 in Luck. His abilities are Fork in the Road, By the Wayside, Familiar Face. He has gear of a satchel. Because John Ford is a 1950s detective, everything is kind of covered to make those items which appear as part of his Wanderer class look natural for his character. So he's a 1950s detective type character. So he has a satchel, which is scoped as him having a trench coat with very deep pockets. He normally has a walking stick, because Wanderer is obviously like a sort of wizard type. Now this is designed to make him look somewhat more vulnerable while still being a weapon. But he's got a small sap, so it looks very inoffensive compared to people carrying big pistols and things. He has waypoints, which in his case look like his business cards, and he has nostrum, which is a liquid he can drink to heal himself, which appears as his whiskey hip flask, his silver hip flask. And that's him. There's not a lot else on the character sheet, but we shall see how that goes as we look through Enclave. And so, skills. Well, as you can see from the character sheet, there are no skills. We've got our stats, and we tend to use those. Now, what we've got to mind is that having no pluses in a stat doesn't mean you're terrible at it. It means actually that you are peak human. You are an extraordinary character in every way before you add the pluses. But if we look in the rules at page 22, we can see that 1, 2, and 3 pluses are mentioned here. 1 plus means you're impressive by real-world standards, within the top 1%. 2 is elite by real-world standards, something 1 in a million people are capable of. 3 is the fringe of what is believable of real-world standards, so impressive as to seem all but impossible. And you can get 4 and 5 as well, so you can be absolutely amazing. The description for might here, crack a rib with a punch is 1, kick in a solid wood door is 2, 3 is lift one end of a small car, 4 is be able to lift a car above your head, and 5 is to be able to throw a car around. So you can see how rapidly those ramp up. Now, John has Vitality 1, which is his sort of life force essence, how much he can influence people rather than any sort of physical strength. He's got Sensory of 2, so he is very observant. A Reflex of 1, which means he is still quite outstanding at moving around, reflexes, dodging, etc. And 2 at Luck, so he is a very lucky individual. Now on top of that we've got abilities. Now John is a Wanderer, As I said, this is the sort of classic wizard Gandalf wandering the world without the magic powers. But his abilities are Fork in the Road, By the Wayside, and Familiar Face. Fork in the Road being he can judge any decision, whether he's going to take one way or another, how they will end out. So he can help it make decisions ahead. By the Wayside is he can find something that he finds by the wayside and enchant it with a small magical power. So finding a stone and making it glow to help him see in the dark or something like that. And Familiar Face is once per adventure he can turn around and recognize somebody, one of the NPCs, and forge a history with them. He's also got gear, his satchel, his walking stick, his waypoints, and his nostrum. These are all kind of magical items. The satchel allows him to draw any small item out of his satchel or deep pockets in the character of John Ford here. And I used it a couple of times to draw out sweeties to charge charm a character and a flashlight. His sap, as well as being a walking stick or a small weapon, it's got a magical effect where it makes him seem inoffensive. Obviously thinking of Gandalf walking into the chamber, leaning heavily on his stick. You wouldn't take this stick away from an old man, would you? And charming people that way, or affecting people that way to make him appear more vulnerable. His waypoints are an item you can encode a small message on, which we used in our adventure to pass a message around. And the nostrum, as I mentioned, is a healing thing. Now, the way the system seemed very similar to other role-playing games is, if we go back to the rules and go on a couple of pages, we can see pitches. So, a player will put forward a pitch of what they want to happen, and the Games Master will come back with what happens, and you can make arguments for it. You know, I'm being sneaky because my character has a reflex, so he can dodge between the buildings and be fairly stealthy, because he's got 1+ in reflexes. And the Games Master will decide if that's credible or not. With your might, whether you're going to pick something heavy up, bash in a door or whatever, because you've got pluses in might or whatever. But this, to me, seems very much like a role-playing game, but minus one step. So in a role-playing game, you would say, oh, I run up to the wall and I climb over it. And the Games Master will call for a dice roll. In this, you'll say, I run up to the wall and I climb up with it. I've got might, so my fingers sort of dig in and I climb my way up. And the Games Master will go, fine, it happens. The difference being, instead of calling for a dice roll and the Games Master deciding the DC to make it difficult or easy and you rolling the dice based on your skill level, you're putting forward exactly what your skill level is, and he's just deciding whether it happens or not. It's the same system as other role-playing games. It's just minus the step of setting a DC and then making a random roll for it. It either happens or it doesn't. In combat, well, it's a diceless system, so we're not going to be rolling any dice for combat. It's all going to be descriptive, as is everything else. You're going to be pitching what you do, although there are certain guidelines. But we'll also notice that on the character sheet, there's no hit points. So everything's going to be up to the Games Master how it lands for you, based on the situation. And combat can be as deadly or as light as the Games Master wants. They can make it high action, so you're getting in fist fights, you're taking small pieces of damage but healing up from them very quickly, or combat can be extremely deadly. You can be surrounded by lots of soldiers and gunned down and killed, as very nearly happened during the adventure I played in. Now, on page 30, we've got combat the player's side. So basically it's telling you what you should be pitching. You know, aim, where are you trying to hit? Motion, how is your body moving when you dodge? Stance, what position are you taking to shoot? And timing, what cue is your character waiting to act? So you're explaining exactly everything you're doing in combat, and the Games Master will be pitching back and describing exactly what's happening in response to it. Now, this can be very much onto you, because you can be using your might if you've got high might, or reflex for dodging around, and your attributes obviously will make you far more effective in combat. rather than my character, which wasn't really combat based, it was more investigative based, as he was a 1950s detective. And so advancement. Well, advancement's dealt with on page 43. As it says in levelling up, all characters begin at level 1. After completing 2 missions, either successes or failures, character will increase in rank to level 2, and can progress further from there all the way up to level 10. Whenever your character levels, distribute 2 pluses among your stats. You may not put both pluses into the same stat at once. So, if I'd completed a second adventure, I only completed 1, I could get an extra point of reflex, an extra point of vitality, or I could start putting points into skill, vigor, arcane, will, might, resilience, or spirit. But I could also take the ones I've got up even higher, because you can take these up, as I said, to 5 pluses, but that's where it maxes out, because you are absolutely incredible by that point. As I said, throwing cards around if you've got 5 might. And so that is Enclave. As I said, it's a very easy system to get into, because it's not vastly different to what you're doing in every other role-playing game. I found it very, very easy to slip into playing it, because where I would be saying, oh, I go and sneak between the shadows, and the games master would be calling for a dice roll. You know, roll your stealth or whatever in Dungeons & Dragons, giving me a DC. In the matter of Enclave, it was a matter of me going forward with what attribute I thought was valid, and suggesting that's how I would complete the task. You know, I am, looking at my character sheet, reflexive, so I can sneak between shadows and keep out of view. And I've got 1 plus in that. So because that is above human, top 1%, I managed to do that task. Now, if somebody had had a sensory of multiple pluses, then they would have probably spotted me. But Enclave agents are rarely going to be coming up against people with that many pluses, because Enclave agents themselves are far beyond the norm. Everything else is already sort of peak human, and the pluses take them beyond that into almost superhuman levels. Now, I would like to once again thank Robby and Thomas for explaining the system to me, being very patient with me as I learnt it, and take me through the first adventure. And I would like to briefly explain what happened in that adventure so you can get a tone for the system. So, we're introduced as Enclave agents, and I was introduced to Thomas's character. Now, Thomas's character is very interesting in that he is a museum exhibit of an Egyptian mummy. He was in a museum and came back to life, and sort of night at the museum type place was haunting the museum, but has been brought in by Enclave because he has these superhuman abilities. And our character's kind of connected because he's a cool cigar-smoking zombie or mummy, and I'm a 1950s detective, so I'm smoking as well. We've got an addiction together, so we hit it off straight away. We are told that there's a problem at a particular ranch where creatures are appearing, and we are to go and find out where they're coming from. So we materialize, we teleport into the ranch, and we almost instantly discover some of these small creatures called settlers. Little people who are harvesting nuts from a nearby tree. And Thomas's character offers them a cigar. I offer them a chewy sweet out of my pocket, a stick of gum. And they like that, and they give me one of the nuts that they've found. And we follow them back, and they've made a little village. And the noises that Robby was making for them made these creatures really, really appealing. I was so taken with them, these settlers, making little oh yeah noises as they went around tasks. I found them very, very appealing indeed. We went up to the ranch, and the mummy, Thomas's character, decided to distract from things by pretending to be a rampaging monster. And he goes up to the ranch house, and the man of the ranch is guarded by lots of guards. People who don't look like ranch workers, although they're dressed as such. They're too clean, and they're carrying sort of military weapons. So he goes up, and the ranch owner, this old decrepit man, thinks that he's Death who's come for him. So he gets invited in. which brings all the attention to him, allowing me to sneak around, which is why I've mentioned my reflex roll to stealth around the place. And I discover in the basement there are jars of teeth. And what we discover as he questions him, passing messages between him using my waypoints, my business cards, that the teeth are from soldiers. He was in a war and he killed lots and lots of soldiers. He's getting up there with some of the most absolutely inhumane monstrosities that's been happened in wars. He has jars and jars of thousands of teeth of people he was responsible for the deaths of. But he decided to get rid of them because they are war crimes, and he started burying them around his farm. And each tooth haunts him by coming back as one of these settlers. So they have tried to kill the settlers, but all they do is become the teeth again. So he cannot get rid of these teeth. He's been haunted by that. And our investigation, we discovered that, and that was it. All we were to do was find out where they came from. But we obviously had to put the clues together. There were a bunch of computers. My character had to try and hack those. Being from the 1950s, he really wasn't used to that. And rather than being this really powerful zombie or mummy and rampaging through the place, Thomas had to really role-play out the situation and draw information out. So we were kind of put in a situation where we weren't the most comfortable in the roles for our characters, but we investigated together and we drew all the clues together. Unfortunately, at the end of the adventure, because we'd caused so much interest, especially by a large mummy turning up and people thinking it was the Grim Reaper come for the ranch master, we were surrounded by a bunch of soldiers. Some trucks turned up with heavy machine guns on them. Dozens of soldiers got out, surrounded the ranch. But fortunately, because we'd solved the mission, we could just beam out. So we tapped our invisible comm badges as our part of Enclave agents, and we transported out, explaining the situation to the people that controlled us. And that was the end of the adventure. I found it very incredible for a game which has such an open world to have such cuteness and such horror within it. The horror, I thought, really came out of it quite naturally. Instead of it being monsters and scary stuff, it was the horror within humanity. Robby did a really, really good job at showing the range of different things available in Enclave, because it is this world of almost an infinite multiverse, but on one world. So we could have a mummy from a museum who'd come back to life, working alongside a 1950s detective, using Star Trek transportation, and ending up with dealing with war criminals who are being haunted by little cute creatures. Your imagination is the limit in Enclave, and I can only highly recommend it. But as usual, I think I've been wittering on for way too long, so thank you very much for watching. But most of all, as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.